I've always claimed that the ability to fantasize is the ability to survive.
People are turning themselves into wizards and demons, knights and clerics, and a bewildering variety of mythical figures, and going through medieval adventures equipped with magical powers.
The lord of this castle is the tragic and terrifying personification of the cruel conflict between the affirmation of life and the corruptions of death. Condemned to exist eternally, unliving but undead, and tormented by mortal passions, he is known as Dracula.
Hello, this is Bleep Bleep Bloop Bloop.
The advance in the behavior of machines in the last 100 years was like 1 billion years of biology. What's more, there may not be a point at which we can say, let's stop the technology of machine intelligence here.
Believe me, Richard, you'll have a better life than any man ever dreamed of. You'll be provided with the most beautiful women in the world. You'll be pampered, waited on, given everything.
Everybody dreams, but well, maybe they're not dreams after all. Here I am, only 7 years old, and I'm a spaceman, just like most of you kids. Stick around, and I'll show you what I mean. I've got to blast off now.
Hello. Welcome to the second episode, the free part of the first half. It's free. The second half is in the Patreon or some other form to be determined in the future. It'll go on the Patreon, maybe other places in the future. Anyway, of the second ever Bleep Bleep Bloop Bloop podcast. I'm coming to you from my usual haunt. You can imagine the kind of a post-industrial, semi-mothballed Castle Gormenghast, like the Mervyn Peak series. And I guess in that scenario I would be sort of like a caretaker maintenance version of Titus Groan. and also part of the reasons for the delay, it's been about it's been more than I guess 2 months. Part of it, I was trying to figure out a better way to record because the audio last time had a disappointing to me. I'm sure for you it's perfectly fine, but you know, I have my high standards. Terribly disappointing, kind of a metallic sound. Part of the problem is the recording. I tried to record in a different spot than I do than the computer workstation where I edit the video and so on, in hopes that I could get away from some of the noise. There's like omnipresent blower, compressor, and other kinds of ambient sound that's kind of unpleasant. But it didn't work out well. The recording device I was using wasn't great, I guess, and also probably it's the reverberation in the background, because all the surfaces here are mostly metallic and concrete or cement. There's not a lot of fabric. There's no curtains or anything to absorb reverberations and sounds. So things can sound a little bit weird, like kind of being inside of a giant pipe. I think I've done something to mitigate that problem now. I don't know for sure. I have no idea. We'll see how it goes. I've been making various setups, changes to the setup for the recording, and trying to do some sound absorption, wizardry, and then I would read aloud the same passage from the same book over and over again to see, and then I would play it back and see how it came out. So what I'm recording now after getting the best possible, I think, that I can imagine result from those trials, but I'll read aloud the same thing I was using for the testing, and you tell me how it sounds. Oh, but first, the visual component for today, if you're watching the video and you're not just listening to the audio, it's wrapping some used old books. So right now, I'm doing a small repair with the tape. It's not normal tape. The tape I'm using, if you can see the video now, you see my hairy arm, I'm positioning a cut length of tape. It's supposed to be special book repair tape, neutral pH, won't yellow, won't become brittle over time, so on and so forth. I don't know. I haven't been using it for 50 years. I can't say what it'll be like then. But here you can see some of the pages is separated from the binding a little bit. I did not a great version of Repair. That's volume 1 of the complete short stories of Somerset Maugham, Maugham. Somerset, Somerset Maugham. He's an early 20th century British author. He was, at the time, for all I know, he may have gotten Nobel Prizes in literature. I'm not going to stop now and try to look online and see what kind of honors he got. But he was extremely well regarded. Now, mostly, for the most part, completely forgotten. Like so much of, it doesn't, pop culture, high culture, whatever. The things that the people who were the movers and the shakers, the thinkers and the talkers of just a little while ago have been completely forgotten. If you're lucky, they've been compressed into like a one-dimensional figure who's known for one book, one film, perhaps, or one piece of news about them from their lifetime, if that. Anyway, so I trimmed the tape with scissors. Next thing I'll be using the book wrap. It's just a sheet of non-adhesive clear plastic. It's kind of like a satin finish, so it won't stick to the book. Because you don't actually. The problem is some of the covering plastic that some people use, and I've used in the past, it's adhered to the cover. And if the cover has anything that is capable of coming off, like in this case on this book, it's fabric hardcover. There's no dust jacket on these. I don't know if they originally came with dust jackets and dust jackets were lost or discarded, or if they never had dust jackets. But the cover is fabric, but there is like an emblem on there. It's a weird, I don't know, maybe the publisher's emblem or maybe Somerset Maugham's emblem. I have no idea, but it's in gold on a dark green box. That gold stuff might potentially come off. It might have just been heat foil stamped on there or something. I don't know, or it could be a form of ink or something. It could come off. It doesn't look like, it may look like fabric, but it's not. It's just something probably glued on, so it could come off. So that's why it's important that the book covering plastic be kind of a satin finish and have like a little bit of like a micro texture, so it doesn't just totally glom onto whatever it's pressed against and pull it off later. Anyway, I'm going to read you the same section from the same book. I'll tell you what it is after I've read it, and see if you recognize it. Every time, you know how if you ever watch other podcasts, sometimes the people will clap to show that they're going to record it. Like, yeah, that's a soft clap. I didn't clap super duper hard, so that they can see in the waveform of the recorded audio, they can see the spike. But I don't like that, so I was using there's a lot of materials here where I'm recording from and where I live and work. So I have access to a lot of random stuff, but it's hard to keep organized, hard to find exactly what I want, and hard to find it again once I found it. But I dug out these are sound makers from, I think, children's toys. So there's this kind of sound. It's a white plastic case with perforated holes perforated onto one end of the cylinder. And I don't know what inside, metal and plastic I can see, but when you shake it parallel to its long axis, so up and down, say, it makes this noise. And then the other one is a simpler, it looks simpler sound maker. Yeah, it's louder. Basically it's a flexible plastic bubble or a balloon shape, kind of like, it's more like it's like a flattened ovoid. So it looks a little bit like a old lollipop. I don't know why. Some lollipops, they're round, or some are kind of like a flattened lozenge shape, like a round lozenge. That's kind of what this is like. It's clear plastic, but then there's a stem, and the stem has an opening. Into the opening, there's kind of a clear plastic whistle thing. So when you squeeze, the air goes out through it, and when you release your finger pressure, the air goes back in. So anyway, those are what I was using. And before I practiced reading the text, I would make that sound and then read. So here it is. Think about, I'll tell you afterwards, but I'll give you a minute. But tell me if you recognize it. You can comment. Tell me if in the comments on YouTube or on Patreon or wherever else you hear this in the future. However many hundreds of years from now. By the way, It is, at the time I'm recording this, it's Saturday, October 18th in 2025. So hopefully I'll get this done, edited, combined it with the cool video. Right now, you can see the video, by the way. I've inserted one side of the cover into the book wrapping plastic already. Have I taped it shut? I wasn't looking at the screen for a moment. I cut the whole piece to length off the roll. Okay, I haven't finished wrapping the one side of the cover yet. Oh, wait, let's see if I have it. So I'm using a ruler. The ruler has a wedge shape, so the wedge is flat side down, and then I'm pulling the flap of plastic that I've already taped. I'm pulling the flap over to go under the last page of the book and on top of the inside flap of the cover, and I'm adjusting it. Now, in a minute, I'm going to pull a piece of tape off. You'll see. I'm going to pull a piece of tape off and put it on there to hold it, and then I'll do the same thing with the other flap. Anyway, so reading from the book I was using for audio sound quality testing to make sure I eliminated as much as possible of the crazy metallic clanking background noise. Comrades, you have heard already about the strange dream that I had last night, but I will come to the dream later. I have something else to say first. I do not think, comrades, that I shall be with you for many months longer, and before I die, I feel it my duty to pass on to you such wisdom as I have acquired. I have had a long life. I have had much time for thought as I lay alone in my stall, and I think I may say that I understand the nature of life on this earth as well as any animal now living. It is about this that I wish to speak to you. Actually, and then sound. So I'm kind of, I don't want to sound too proud, but that's the best reading I've done of that passage. Every other time I've read it, I've managed to get snagged because the author, their way of writing, they're a famous author, well respected, and I admire them a great deal myself. But their way of writing is not exactly the same as mine. So when I was reading it aloud all the other times I'm practicing, I would get hung up here and there, and sometimes I would misspeak because I would insert a little bit the next word that I would have used in certain parts. Anyway, so excuse me, sorry, burp. Give you a second. You think about it. Do you recognize that? If you said that came from George Orwell's Animal Farm, then you were correct. Woo! Snaps for you, yes. That's from Animal Farm. And in a little way, after a fashion, it's kind of it's evocative of the purpose of my making these vlogs. Yeah, sharing the idea. That's the pig, depending on whose interpretation of the story that you hear or read. That's Major or Old Major. He's the prize pig of Farmer Jones in the book, and he's giving this kind of lecture, and then pretty soon he is removed from the story. I'm not going to spoil it for you. You can read it. Maybe some other time I may give a long discursive discussion of monologuing on Orwell's Animal Farm, but not today. Anyway, so I have to admit I was a little bit surprised. I shouldn't have been. Obviously, in retrospect, I shouldn't have been. But I was surprised that I didn't get as many views on the first episode as I had thought. When I uploaded to YouTube, I don't know, I kind of naively expected to be deluged, even by robots. They always talk about the dead internet theory and how all the comments and the traffic is bots and weird sock puppets operated by scammers from, weird shelves stacked with smartphones that are running software that is leaving a bunch of comments to generate fake interaction that gives them some sort of cover which helps them evade detection when later they're used in some kind of DOS attack or some kind of mass personality assassination on some other part of social media or something. I don't know. As far as I know, I haven't checked in the last week or so. Periodically I look in, very few views and very I think zero comments actually. So I was kind of surprised. I thought there'd be more. That's not why I haven't recorded the second episode sooner. It's just, of course, everyone's like, oh, I'm busy, so busy. Really quite busy. And also, I'd like to have some idea of what I'm going to be talking about. And the problem is too many ideas. There's too many topics that I would like to get into. But what I want to tell the world, tell you, my listeners, whoever you may be, right now, zero. I'm not even counting myself because I hate to listen to the sound of my own voice recorded and played back. It's really, it's extremely unpleasant for me to hear. But I think many people are like that. Anyway, so future audience, think about maybe in a vein or the same kind of situation as in 12 Monkeys, where Bruce Willis's character's phone calls played back from a carefully restored but still very hard to understand and hear answering machine tape. I don't know. I have no idea. Hopefully this comment they'll be used to train AI or chatbots or whatever. I don't know. I have no maybe a Vocaloid in the far future, or the nearer than I think. But anyway, so partly it's just been very busy, and when I would think about what I wanted to talk about, I start to make notes, and I began making notes on index cards, and that was, it just seemed insane. When I got a couple of index cards with some notes on them, and then I was thinking about how to keep them in order, and it's just, and then how to store them, and and like in the vein of overthinking, the kind of one of my issues is I overthink. So I'm trying to imagine how I preserve these for the benefit of future generations. Although I have I think 0 or nearly 0 views on the first video. So I don't even know who would be looking for the source material, who would be digging through the archives looking for my note cards. But that's just how I am. So I stopped taking notes on note cards, and then I decided to install a wiki, a local wiki on the. There are a lot of computers around here, but the machine that I use, my personal workstation, to install a wiki running locally. So you have to install a web server, you have to install a database. Has to be running. The database host has to be running all the time, along with the web server, and also whatever scripting languages, the runtime for scripting language that the software runs on has to be there, and so on and so forth. So I ended up installing a package with Apache, MySQL, and so on, running locally with PHP, and I downloaded the same software Wikipedia uses, MediaWiki, I believe. I downloaded that, and I began taking notes into MediaWiki and making pages. And I had to edit the style sheet for that because just the default is quite unattractive. And also I installed some extensions, plugins for MediaWiki. That there are all software now is half software archaeology, right? You have to look at software archaeology and also probably like security vetting, because you have to trust whoever wrote this. Even if it seems innocuous, even if you're going to be running it locally. Usually, what I mean is web software like MediaWiki run locally and not on a web server. It seems like it ought to be safer, right? Because you have your firewall, you have your own desktop or whatever, your workstation security software on the operating system. I use a form of Windows, not the most recent, and I use a heavily customized version of Windows. I've been in it and made some changes to make it less of a sieve, but. You'd think it would be less of a security concern, but there are still security concerns around it. Still things you need to do to make it as safe as you reasonably can while still using it for whatever you need it for. Anyway, I got MediaWiki installed. I got some extensions. Like one of the extensions, I can't remember the name of it now. I'm not going to stop and look it up. But it's one that allows you to paste images directly from the clipboard. And that way you don't have to do the whole dance where you upload an image, you have to put captions and information, blah, blah, blah. If you just want to take something from the clipboard up and just paste it directly into the text area where you're writing, this works, and it gives you a little tag and the image will be embedded. So I was doing that, and I've begun furiously making notes. I still have like less than a half dozen pages on my little desktop bleep bleep bloop bloop show notes codex wiki, but some of the pages are pretty long, right? Because they're like topic stubs or things I'd like to talk about. But I've been updating my own little Bleep Bleep Bloop Bloop wiki for a while when I realized that I also wanted to have timestamps. And I know that you can see that, the history of each page, that'll show you different versions, and you can get a very fine-grained, very detailed information about the changes and when they were made. That's not what I wanted. I wanted something where I could quickly look at a section I'd written and see about when it was written. So then I went and I installed a browser extension that gives you timestamps. You can right-click in a text area where you're writing and say insert date and time, and inserts it. But the funny thing was, there are not a lot of them, and the one that best fit what I wanted, so the browser I'm using for this is Firefox. It's not the latest version of Firefox. It's several versions behind, running quite a few extensions. I'm using a version of Firefox, as I said. Anyway, so it's a Firefox extension, and it was uploaded. There's only one version, uploaded once by some dude. It's the only extension that user uploaded to the Firefox add-ons. I didn't get it from GitHub. I got it from Firefox add-ons. And they link to a GitHub. The GitHub is empty. There's nothing there. Without getting into it, I got a little bit paranoid. This is funny. This is like here's your first anecdote for the podcast. I got a bit paranoid, thinking that perhaps it's some kind of a snitching or like some form somehow malware. So I opened the extension. I looked at the files inside. It looks fine to me. I don't see anything weird. But paranoia and so on and so forth being what it is, I did a bit of digging, and eventually I found the guy. I don't know why. I don't know why he deleted his original GitHub account, the one under which he posted that extension. He developed it, posted it, and it's linked on the Firefox add-ons pages. I don't know why he deleted the GitHub, but he still exists. As far as I know, he's an American citizen living in America and a straight shooter, I guess. I don't know. Anyway, so that's funny. I've been using that religiously to insert date timestamps. It works fine. It works great. And like I said, I've been making changes to the style sheet. Styling for MediaWiki is a bit of pain in the butt, but I've got it to where I can use it. And so I've got these long pages of notes and pasted in pictures, and because there's like a paste limit, I have to see if I can adjust that. But it's like by default, the Wikimedia plugin I'm using for pasting pictures in, and I think it has a 400 kilobyte ceiling on how large the files can be to paste in. So sometimes the pain in the butt, you have to use like a what's that thing, snippet or snipping tool. Okay, so the Windows built-in snipping tool, you can use that. But so you take a snip, you may have to zoom in or zoom out on the image, make it smaller, or zoom out rather, definitely not zoom in. Zoom out on an image you want to insert, use snippet tool, take a picture, and then paste that in. Sometimes you do repeatedly until you get under the 400 kilobyte limit. It's a bit of a pain in the butt also. But it's still better than having to go through the manual upload process and all of that. Anyway, so I got these long pages of notes about all kinds of random stuff. Things that seem to me interesting, I think would seem interesting to someone like me. And that's between you and me, that's who this is for. It's for a hypothetical person, quite like myself. Could be male, could be female. Could be whatever people will be in the future. People already are diversifying into all kinds of interesting and strange types that I couldn't have foreseen when I was a younger man. Anyway, someone mentally, their attitude, their point of view, like mine or congruent to mine. That's who I'm recording for. So there's all kinds of things that to me that seem very interesting. But if I were to approach a normal, random person of the current time and the current global culture and describe the topic to them, they probably wouldn't be very interested. Animal Farm, for example, is very mainstream. So some of the topics and connections and things I'd like to discuss are rather less maybe obvious or notable or to a random person, to a normie, as they call them. Anyway, that book aside, in addition to the Wikimedia pages, it's not Wikipedia, Wikimedia. In addition to those, I'm not looking at those right now, by the way. On the screen, I've got the book covering video playing, in case I want to see what I'm doing at the moment in the video and describe it again. I can see now I have this, it seems like the second volume of the Somerset Maugham book. set. It's 2 volumes. It has everything, every short story that he wrote. So, by the way, I don't know about you guys. I like to read. I hate reading on screen. I can read whole books on screen if I have to, but I don't enjoy it. It's not nice. And you can't make bookmarks. You can't put Post-its in. You can't reference page numbers on like a Kindle. I know they say you can. And I know you can make selections and clips and highlights and things like that, but it doesn't really work well. And the more and more that these devices are locked down, it's always a trap. It's embrace, what they call it, embrace, extend, and extinguish, something like that. That's what they are always up to. So Kindle is like a walled garden, literally like a walled garden. If you get a bunch of Kindle books, you can't take them out anywhere. You can't put them on any other device. You can't back them up. Amazon can go in there and edit the content of the books, and without you even knowing, they can remove the books. There's so much that can go wrong. It's just crazy to get involved with it. And I just like the feel of paper. Let's put it that way. And there's no lack of storage space here. I can continue to stack up books, and they're clean. It's a clean and dry storage area. And they'll last longer here than anywhere else. But unfortunately, I've noticed lately the prices of the used books that I want seem to be climbing. I'm not sure why. I heard some kind of stuff about the companies that are training neural nets, the AI chatbots, and other things like that, that they're buying up old books of prose and old books like encyclopedias, and dictionaries, and so on, but also novels, books of short stories, and everything like that, comic books, everything. They're buying up printed materials, scanning them, OCRing them, getting the text out of the scans, and then they're actually pulping or destroying the original books. So that's kind of, I think that's driving the price. I may be wrong, but I think that's driving the prices up for the kind of books that I like to read. So they're getting more expensive, but it's still worth it. The autofocus, I can see that got blurry there. Hopefully, autofocus zoom in. All right, get in focus again. Getting in focus yet? Still blurred. See, here I'm using is blurry, but I'm using a metal ruler to make a straight cut with a box cutting knife in the plastic sheet. There, okay, in focus, out of focus again. Hey. I'm watching it. Okay, focus again. Woo! We got focus. I don't know why it got blurry there for a minute. There's nothing I can do about it. The video's already pre-recorded. But as I was saying, I'm not looking at the the Bleep Bleep Bloop Bloop wiki install while I'm talking now. I'm just talking off my cuff. But I do have a large sheet of something like graph paper. It's very crinkly though. I'll see if I can make crinkle sound. Yeah, it really didn't come across well. Maybe hear that? Bit of a fool. Sorry, wait a minute. All right. Hear that? It's because the paper, it's not regular graph paper. It's kind of, I don't know what the original intended purpose was. I got reams and reams of it here. It's a kind of a orange sherbet colored grid with millimeter spaced. The lines are the fine lines are a millimeter apart, I'd say, and they're in 5 mm by 5 mm darker bordered boxes. And there's a larger, thicker border at the 10 mm point. So it's a bunch of, it's a very fine grid, to say, in a kind of orange sherbet, like a very, or pale salmon color, something like that. And the paper itself is, here, the word they use for it translates as sulfuric acid paper. So you'd say, when I was a child, we would have called it tracing paper. So I've got a big sheet of tracing paper here folded over several times, and I've written notes on it with arrows just with the hopes of giving me some kind of guidance while I'm recording this. So the first thing is greetings. I forgot to ask, how are you? Hope you're doing well. I'm hanging in there. In the comments, you can mention how you're doing, any personal challenges or triumphs you've had lately. And I as I've alluded to already, I do check the comments. There's just no comments yet, but I do check the comments. I may not reply, but I probably will read your comment, assuming that it's sometime within maybe 50 years of 2025. I can't, unless there's something done to extend lifespan. I can't promise that I'll be around to read after any longer than that. So keep that in mind. Don't wait too long to leave a comment. I may reply if I can. So, okay, I already talked about that. What else we got? Yes, the deep dive. Yes. You remember the previous public vlog? I think it was public vlog, or was it the Patreon part? I can't remember. I don't want to go back to listen. I hate to hear my own voice. But I remember that I was reading from a list like a madman and cackling while I was doing it, and I'm laughing thinking about it. I was reading the phrases sounded like ka-chow or ker-chow, something like that, but it usually just ended in chow. Sometimes just chow, but ka-chow, ker-chow, ka-chow, ka-chow, and I was laughing when I was reading from it. So I'll tell you more about it later, but that's an example of the deep dive situation. It's related to a famous comic artist, like a visual artist who drew comics, named Winsor McCay, WINSOR MCCAY. Excuse me. He lived from the late 19th century until, I believe, 1934. He passed away from a massive stroke. But he's most famous for the cartoon not cartoon. Well, he made it into cartoon. The comic. It was a Sunday comic, printed a lot of the time in full color, called Little Nemo. Not Finding Nemo, not about the fish, not that. It's not Captain Nemo like Jules Verne. This is Little Nemo. So Nemo, if I remember correctly, it's Latin for nothing or nobody. That's why they have Captain Nemo. He's supposed to be some kind of a mysterious anti-hero character fighting, taking revenge against a cruel industrial society or whatever it's doing, or colonialism or whatever it was. I have to reread Jules Verne to remind myself. But so the name means nothing. So Little Nemo, likewise, I guess his name means nothing or nobody. It's a little boy who goes to sleep, and when he goes to sleep, he has very elaborate, and as they're drawn by Winsor McCay, very beautiful dreams and adventures in his dreams. And it all begins by, if I remember correctly, the king of Slumberland sends some minions to some of his subjects to go and recruit this boy Nemo as a playmate for his own daughter, the princess of Slumberland. So it begins like that, and it went on. It was very popular for a long time. In the late 1980s, in Japan, some Japanese animators made a full-length feature film with some famous voice actors. Well, famous to me. What's the name of that guy? I can't remember his name. Jeez. I'll remember as soon as I get off here. But anyway, famous voice actors, and it was very well done, and they changed the story a little bit. And the script, the final script, it wasn't written exclusively by this person, but at one point, the vision for the plot and everything, it was done by the famous science fiction writer, also sadly passed, Ray Bradbury, whom I greatly admire. I really, as some people in my family would say, the wording would be they have a lot of time for someone. Have a lot of time for someone, meaning that they really like them a lot. It doesn't mean that the person's alive or with them at that moment. So I have a lot of time for Ray Bradbury. I really like Ray Bradbury, especially when you compare him to some of the other science fiction authors of his era, some of his contemporaries. You're kind of also, before anyone jumps in to remind me that Ray Bradbury did not consider himself a science fiction writer, I fully understand that. I know it, and many times, not every time, sometimes he said he wrote science fiction. Other times he was very vocal about proclaiming that he was not a science fiction writer. Yeah, okay, so I understand. But anyway, he was a science fiction writer. Science fiction, fantasy, and regular. He wrote detective novels. He wrote murder mysteries. He wrote a lot of stuff, you know. He wrote horror, for sure. But for me, primarily, growing up, he was a science fiction writer. Anyway. So I go in these crazy rabbit holes, and the ka-chow stuff, it really was from one of Winsor McCay's comics called Little Sammy Sneeze, and I have more to say about that comic and about the CHOW stuff, but I'll save it for the next half, the Patreon half. So I won't get into it just yet. Anyway, so I get in these crazy rabbit holes, and in Winsor McCay's case, before you know it, I got a bunch of his other works. I got a book of Little Sammy Sneeze comics first, and then I got, I can't remember the order. What was it? Did I get that first? Maybe. I think I got, because the cheapest thing that seemed like it had any heft to it, like the most easy, because getting things where I am, getting things shipped here can be a pain in the tuchus, or pain in the tuchus, or whatever. How do Jewish people say it? I think tuchus. Pain in the behind, pain in the arse, whatever, to get stuff shipped here. And getting used books especially, because most used books, like getting things directly from Amazon can be relatively straightforward, or from other international retailers, relatively straightforward. Getting things used on Amazon, because the used sellers won't ship to where I am, or they charge a very pretty penny to do so. And sometimes I'm lucky, and Amazon, they entrust their stuff to Amazon, and then Amazon is just like buying a new book from Amazon in that case. But usually the more esoteric, more weird, fringy, unusual old stuff is hard to get. Oh, back to the video. I'm looking now, I can see myself. I brought in a hardcover of the complete stories of Evelyn Waugh. So as I was like, for me anyway, when I say you, I mean myself or people like me. You always want to get the complete stories of so-and-so, or all the stories and novels of blah, blah, blah. If it's printed on very thin paper, and it's 1,000 pages long, that's fine. You want to get in one big book if you can, to get as much as you can, because you don't know. Whatever the author may be most famous for. For example, right now it's, in the videos, the complete stories of Evelyn Waugh. I'm measuring the amount of book wrapping plastic I'll need, and I'm going to cut it straight in a second. Yeah, I'm getting the cutter. But anyways, Evelyn Waugh. So Evelyn Waugh, again, almost forgotten. He was a British author. He was a Catholic. He passed away in the mid-20th century. One of his sons, I think, who had gone on to become like an academic, that son just recently passed also. So we're 2 generations down now from this guy. He's most famous for a novel called Brideshead Revisited. Okay, it's super famous. People have even written parodies of it, or like satires, or they've written like sequels to it, sort of. I have one somewhere around here. I can't remember who by. It's something about brides. It's called Brideshead Revised instead of Revisited. But I haven't yet read it, and I haven't read the original Brideshead Revisited. I haven't had a chance. But I have read a number of stories by Evelyn Waugh, a number of short stories, and I've read some of his early short novels. So the book I'm wrapping here, it has all the short fiction. Also, it has a novelette or a novella called Love Among the Ruins, or Love Amid the Ruins. I've read that. That's excellent. So it's sort of like a science fiction. Remember, we're talking about Evelyn Waugh, Evelyn Waugh. So I think it's Love Among the Ruins. It's if you've seen Kubrick's film A Clockwork Orange, or you've read the novel on which it's based, which is not the same as the film, by the way, but the feel you might get is similar to Love Among the Ruins. It's kind of set in like a dystopic, near-future Britain, where they've taken strange, to us, strange, maybe not, maybe people support that, depending where you are, and what your affiliations would be, but it seems strange, or seems like a pointless and not workable strategy for rehabilitating criminals, basically, young criminals. So the main character in Love Among the Ruins is a young criminal who is not really reformed. But he becomes just as in the film The Clockwork Orange, he becomes a little bit of like a centerpiece to prove the success of the government's criminal rehabilitation methods, and prove that they're right and they should be continued and should be funded, and that the politicians involved who promoted them shouldn't be punished in any way for their role. Anyway, so that book there that you can see me wrapping, it has all of his short stories and also that novella. It doesn't have everything he ever wrote. There's a lot yet that he's written that I don't have. Slowly, by hook and by crook, in pieces and parts, I'm tracking it down. Ideally, in the smallest number of purchases, the smallest number of books. Just not even because of lack of space. As I said, it's not really a problem with space. The problem is too many books, even by the same author, and they get, they get scattered around. It's hard to keep them together. The fewer books there are, the fewer you have to keep track of and keep together on a shelf or in storage or whatever. Anyway, where was I? So I'm wrapping that book still. Yes. What else I got? Oh, I remember. So I was talking a little bit about the deep dive. So the book that had the most meat that I could find, quickest and easiest for Winsor McCay, the comic artist, worked primarily for newspaper syndicates in the early 20th century. He had a really interesting biography, which, who knows, I may talk about that in a future episode. Maybe I'll talk about it in the Patreon half of this episode. He had a very interesting life. Sad towards the end, but interesting. So one of his comics, one of the early, very popular comics was, I think it was called Dreams of a Rarebit Fiend, or Dreams of the Rarebit Fiend. What is it? Do I have it here? No, I don't have it. I don't have it right within vision here. But so basically, from interviews and other documentation, he wanted to draw a comic about the idea of people having like bad dreams or hallucinating when they were in kind of like nicotine withdrawal. But because he was doing these comics, it literally the turn of the 20th century, like we're talking 1901, 1902, 3, somewhere along that time. He was doing it then. Smoking wasn't considered decorous. It wasn't considered suitable for comics for a public newspaper, right? So he had to think of something else. He had something funny that he could use as like an addiction or a craving that could serve as the touchstone for these comic strips. So I think Dreams of a Rarebit Fiend, or Dreams of the Rarebit Fiend. So they're about a rarebit fiend is someone who's addicted to rarebits. So rarebit, R-A-R-E-B-I-T, and fiend, F-I-E-N-D, like a drug fiend. So something like that. So rarebits, by that, Welsh rarebit. So it's basically grilled cheese, like Welsh rabbit. They call Welsh rabbit also. The idea of being, I guess the Welsh people in some time were so benighted and so impoverished and so just engendered such pathetic circumstances that they couldn't get real rabbit. They couldn't have a rabbit pie or a rabbit sandwich or whatever. So the Welsh rarebit, Welsh rabbit, was like cheese on bread, and that was to them as good as a rabbit, I guess. I don't know, something along those lines. I could do a deep dive into that. I could find out in depth about that, and then I would give you a whole podcast, whole episode here about the history of grilled cheese sandwiches, which I may do. That's possibly in the cards. I'll make a note about that in my local desktop wiki, or on a note card or something. Anyway, so that was the first one I got. It was really interesting. They're all black and white. They're reprinted. It was a Dover reprint of. It wasn't all the Welsh rarebit. It wasn't all the rarebit fiend strips, but I think it was like all the Sunday strips or whatever. It was as many as they could find when they made the book, and I got that. And then I think I got the Little Sammy Sneeze book, and that one is also not a complete collection. Let me look. I'm looking now at the spine of the book. The book is, I think it's like a subsidiary or associated imprint of the Fantagraphics publishing house. So I think Sunday Press is the name of this one, Sunday Press. So I don't know why these large format books that Sunday Press is putting out, they don't have anything on the spine. The spines are completely blank. I don't know if they're hand bound or what's going on, but there's nothing on the spine. So I had to make my own, print out my own spine labels and then slide them under the plastic. Just like you see I'm wrapping the books, these books that I'm referring to also are wrapped. So for these very expensive Sunday Press books about Winsor McCay's different strips and other comics of the same era, I had to print out my own spine labels and slide them under. So the Little Sammy Sneeze book is Little Sammy Sneeze, the Complete Color Sunday Comics, 1904 to 1905. So that's very specific. And I did some digging, and without referring, I'm not looking at it. I'm not looking at any of my notes. I'm not going to open a media wiki page here and try to skim through it. But suffice to say that there were some the strip ran in black and white first. Then it was given. He was blessed with color. Then he began running them in color, and then after a certain point, they went back to black and white. And it's a big. I tried to track down the strips. People think that all early newspapers in the United States certainly have been cataloged, and they've all been scanned. And you go to newspapers.com, I think is the name of the site. It's a privately run service, and you pay some fee per month, and then you can just, to your heart's content, you can dive into complete, perfectly scanned versions of all newspapers of American history. But you can. People imagine you can go back and read about the U.S. Civil War in 1860s or something. From different points of view, you can go back and read the newspapers of the Confederacy and newspapers of the Union and read their coverage of the same battles and make your own decision. No, you cannot. You can't do this stuff. For the most part, really old newspapers, they're not scanned at all. You can't find them. The Library of Congress in the United States may have these old American newspapers. Until, I can't remember the exact year without looking at them just off the top of my head, what I remember. Until a certain point, every periodical in America, they were required, if they wanted copyright protection, they had to submit 2 copies of every newspaper. Or in the olden days, when the newspapers would run multiple editions in a day, there'd be like an early edition in the morning, there'd be a midday edition, and then there would be maybe an evening edition of this on the same day, especially on weekends, I think. Because news was happening today. You had the reporters running around on bicycles or mopeds or horses or something, and later they had photographers with them running around taking pictures of crime scenes and of happenings and disasters and cataclysms and all these sorts of things, and people arriving to town and leaving town, and they would put out fresh versions of the same newspaper with the new information. So something like the most important edition or the best edition of the day, often the evening edition, would be submitted to the Library of Congress. So the Library of Congress has always been getting, they didn't make the digital stuff. I think now they can submit digitally as of like 2017, something relatively recent. Before that, it all had to be in print. And they're getting them, but they're not scanning them. The Library of Congress, they have a special program. They focus on, like, I think early newspapers by what they consider early. It's in 1890 or 1900 to 1920s or something. I can't remember the name of it. Maybe once I finish recording this first half, maybe I'll take a break in between the halves, and then I'll go and look up and find the name of the program. It's something very official and kind of pompous and grandiose sounding, but scanning all these. They're not scanning all of them. There are huge gaps, even for famous newspapers. For example, so pertaining to what I'm talking about, Winsor McCay and his comics. His first newspaper in New York City, where he worked on other newspapers first, in the Midwest, or west of the Appalachians, east of the Mississippi. I think like Cleveland or Cincinnati. I think Cincinnati. But then he went to New York City. He went to the big time. He worked for the New York Herald. I think it was under Pulitzer, for whom the Pulitzer Prize is named later. Or maybe it wasn't under Pulitzer. It was under, what was the name of that guy? Gordon Bennett. So, my bad. He wasn't under Pulitzer. Winsor McCay worked for Gordon Bennett, Jr. Somehow, by the way, yes, it's Gordon Bennett. If you read other old novels, they use it as a minced oath, where people would say, in like old British time vernacular, people may have said, "Cor blimey," or "Blimey, mate," and "Cor blimey," or "Cor," like that. Cor was a minced oath for God. Blimey was a minced oath version of blind me. So people, when they said "Cor," they're saying God. Like people say "Geez" or whatever. It's similar to "Geez," and then "Blimey" was a minced oath of "blind me," like God blind me, meaning like whatever's happening, I can't take it. I don't want to see this. Make me blind so I don't have to look at it, I guess. Something like that, or punish me or something. I don't know. It was whatever. You get the idea. Anyway, so Gordon Bennett is a minced oath. people say Gordon Bennett like a curse, or used to, not now. I don't know why, but I've read old novels where people say Gordon Bennett. They exclaim. It was crazy. Anyway, so the comics in that book, so the Little Sammy Sneeze book, it's not all Little Sammy Sneezes. And even though the ones were printed in Sundays in color, in maybe the New York Herald, the New York Herald syndicated them in an early version of syndicating. They had telephones at this time. 1900, they had telephones, so they were able to talk to people. Also, telegraph. They had some kind of relationships with other papers, and sometimes, and you look through this archive. I can't remember the name of it. I'm sorry. It's the Library of Congress newspaper archive of the early 20th century. They have a special name for it. It's very badly made and hard to search. Anyway, they have you can look around, and you can try by luck. You can tell how many records they have for each of the newspapers that are in that archive. So some, they only have a few issues of a couple times in 1 year of many years. Only very little coverage, very spotty is what I'm saying. And sometimes you can find the newspapers that are associated with the New York Herald, and the New York Herald syndicated or sold their cartoons to. And the same cartoons that are found in color in this book and would have been printed in color in the New York Herald, you can find them in black and white. They were printed in black and white originally. These are the newspaper scans I'm talking of in this Library of Congress archive. They're in full color. The scans are full color. So whatever they were, that's how it looks. Maybe it's a little bit yellowed by time. So they're in black and white. And sometimes they're not in the comic section. Sometimes they're in the middle. And also sometimes they printed them on random days. They didn't print them on Sundays only. So it's interesting how things were done back then. But basically, it's like an iceberg, the past. The part that someone like Sunday Press, good for him. Thank you for his service to humanity and to culture, keeping the stuff out there. He goes back somehow. He finds what he's found. He prints it. He says this is a complete Sunday color strips during that period. I believe him. Okay. But then there was other stuff that is not in there, and that is maybe been completely lost. Maybe someone kept someone like William or Bill Blackbeard. He was a Californian guy. He just passed away, I think 2011. He started his own foundation to preserve comics, and he had what they call tear sheets. So tear sheet means you see a comic strip or see something of interest in a newspaper or other printed material, you literally tear it out, or you cut it out with a razor blade or something, and you preserve it. So there may be tear sheets for some of these comics, and there may be some for which there's no record at all. They've been completely lost. Or maybe they'll be found in the future. Maybe someone will tear down some old house, and they'll find someone had stuffed newspaper into the walls to use insulation or something. And then by luck, there'll be some missing comic strips there. Anyway, so I got the Little Sammy Sneeze book. And then I also, there's a Winsor McCay Little Nemo collection from Taschen, Taschen. It's a really thick book and kind of expensive, but still, for what you get, is half the price or something of the Sunday Press books. And thank God, I'm grateful for it. It's super nice. It's beautiful, beautiful. And it's all the Little Nemo. And it's the Little Nemo over all the years. Winsor McCay was at the New York Herald. Then he went to, I can't remember the name of it. He went to whatever it was, Hearst's paper, New York World, I think. He went to the Hearst Syndicate and worked for Hearst for a while. Then he went back to the Herald and whatever the Herald had become. And then I think he went back to Hearst again. And eventually he stopped doing Little Nemo. He was discouraged, and also kind of like the tastes had changed, the folks' tastes. So it was somewhat less popular at the time. It went out of fashion, and the audience wasn't as vocal and as enthusiastic for it. So he just was consigned to doing editorial. They call it editorial work, and it wasn't just. It was basically anything that the editor of the newspaper that Hearst ran in New York wanted him to draw, he would draw. So they're even like when Hearst published a book against prohibition. When they banned the sale and consumption of alcohol, with many exceptions, of course, that people have sort of forgotten. But they're basically they fake medicine, just like they have medicinal marijuana nowadays, or anyway, that was one phase it went through on the way to legalization. Who knows? But they had medicinal alcohol, same kind of thing. They had tonics, which the main ingredient was ethanol, alcohol. But during Prohibition time, Hearst was against Prohibition. He wanted to bring alcohol back, make it legal again, make it open it up again. So there's a whole book about that, and you can find it online for sale. Old copies, tattered, falling apart, and the illustrations on a dust jacket and inside on the pages are also by Winsor McCay. He has a very distinctive style. Anyway, and so what else I got? So the Sunday Press. That's all the exclusive Winsor McCay stuff. But I also have two other Sunday Press books. Forgotten Fantasy. That's Sunday comics from 1900 to 1915. I'm sorry, the sound may sound a little bit weird because I'm turning away from the microphone to look at the shelf where I had the spines of these books so I could read them and repeat them to you. I try to turn back towards the microphone when I speak. So, Forgotten Fantasy, Sunday Comics, 1900 to 1915. And also I have Society is Nix, Gleeful Anarchy at the Dawn of the American Comic Strip, 1895 to 1915. So the dates don't 100% overlap. And the reason, one of I got Society is Nix, I got that because it's interesting because okay, imagine a New York City where most of the vehicles are horse-drawn carriages. That's the New York City that Winsor McCay would have arrived in when he first got there, okay? And then cars begin to appear. And the cars, at first, many of them, I think a majority, were electric, literally powered by batteries. So they would have been fairly silent except for maybe just the sounds of the wheels on the pavement. And a lot of the vehicles are electric. It's really interesting, especially they had electric ambulances even. To me, it sounds bizarre. And they had charging stations, just like they have power walls now. They have places to plug in your electric car to power up. They had places, central places to charge the electric vehicles. So the ambulances, taxis, a lot of other like delivery and service vehicles were electric. And then at the same time, the gasoline-powered vehicles, the internal combustion engine vehicles, they call ICE, those begin to show up. But they're also, the horses remain. So you've got horses alongside battery-powered, like big lead-acid battery-powered vehicles, and you've got ICE vehicles with the gasoline-powered engines showing up, and they're all using the road at the same time. And when he first got there would have been telephones, but not everyone would have had a telephone. It took time for telephones to really be widely adopted. They were kind of like a luxury at first, right? But so when Winsor McCay first gets to New York, there would be no cinemas as we think of them today. I think in 1904, 1905, they may have had something like a kinetoscope or something where where you stand and there's like a machine on a pedestal and one like a monocular, like one lens. You press your eye against it and turn a crank or press a button or something, and it would have shown you like basically like a slideshow, something along that, or make a very herky-jerky, very short film strip, and you would have paid for the privilege. And the room and the people at the time would have bemoaned it and said it was a threat to the moral order and so on. So pretty crazy stuff. But he came there. It's amazing. There would have been no radio yet. Like people didn't own radios and listen to radios for entertainment. Television is not even a thought in anyone's mind. Oh, okay. Now I'm just looked at the video again as it's playing. So this I remember this. So you see, I've used tape. I've tried to brace. There's extreme discoloration, like yellowing, along the folds of the dust jacket for this. It's a dust jacket for a book of Nathaniel Hawthorne stories. It's supposed to be all of Nathaniel Hawthorne's short stories. So there's very yellow there, and it's tattering and cracking at the bottoms. I'm using that same tape I told you about, the special preservative tape, and I've gone over where all the folds are to strengthen the paper. So even if the paper deteriorates or something, it won't break. And then you can see I've used tape on the edges where there have been some flaking or some fragments or some tears and things like that. I put tape there. I'm going to do something interesting, kind of like kintsugi, Kintsugi. It's sort of like a kintsugi repair in a second, but I got to finish with the taping. I'm taping this one. I remember because to me the dust jacket felt kind of brittle, So I carefully braced and everything, every edge. So, yeah, all right. I didn't do the top yet. I can see the top is still flopping in the breeze. So, to me, imagining that, and you can find photos of New York at that time. There were actually books published, like photos of, I can't remember. You can find them on archive.org. And maybe in the next episode, I'll brush up. I'll open them on this workstation. I'll open up the books and show and get into more detail describing them. But there are photos of New York City streets and buildings and so on and so forth from the turn of the century when McKay and his contemporaries would be in New York City running around with their straw hats and their 1920s style suits and their umbrellas and whatever running around. You see photos where you can see some of the vehicles. You can identify that's definitely an electric delivery truck because of the shape, the way it is, and because they don't have the need for. There's no the front where nowadays nowadays, maybe you in the future, 50 years, 100 years from now, you're not. But in my time, where you would have the engine would be usually in the front under a hood that can be lifted so you can service or diagnose problems with the engine, the workings, and so on. These old vehicles don't have that. So, and then you if you look carefully, you eventually find a picture that identifies the make and the model, and it's definitely electric, and it's definitely an electric vehicle. You can see photos of that, plus horses pulling carriages down the street. It's amazing to me. But also, what's interesting is what they leave out. So when people were taking photos, to publish in books of showing New York, there were things they would leave out. Obviously, they would leave out the like the red light districts, but also things that were not per se illegal or terrible, but were just like dead class A or like low status. So things like I don't know. Have you ever heard of a dime museum? Like a dime, D-I-M-E, meaning the price of admission may have been a dime at the time. So dime museums, Winsor McKay got its start, by the way, working as like a painter for a dime museum in the Midwest. I mean, painting their windows, showing coming attractions and things like that, and trying to draw people in with work. That's how he did that for years before he got his first newspaper job. He was doing that. So there were dime stores everywhere. Every big city had them. Even mid-sized cities of a couple tens of thousands of people had their own multiple dime museums. So in New York City, they also had some that were very famous and well-trafficked, but because they were like a low status and for the common people type of entertainment, they weren't art museums. They called them dime museums. They had basically it was like a stationary carnival or stationary sideshow with freaks, and many of the freaks were fake. They're not real. They're people pretending to be, say, African tribesmen or Tarzan types, or people were just unpleasant looking, maybe by the standards of the time, like bearded women or whatever. It may have been a fake beard, an ugly one with a fake beard. They had dwarves and so on, pretend to be men from New Guinea or something. They had all kinds of crazy stuff. In addition to, I think, if I remember correctly, also just maybe stillborn fetuses in jars of formaldehyde or formalin or something like that. But they also had live animals. So the one in New York, Winsor McKay didn't work at the one in New York, but the one in New York was very popular, but it's not shown, as far as I can tell, in any of these books of photos. You can find a photo of it. Someone took one photo. It's on Wikipedia, I think, if you find it. But there's not a lot of photos of it at different times, showing different decorations or the signs or anything like that. But it had live animals. It had like lions and tigers and things like that, and gorillas and everything in a building in downtown New York City. And they shut down in like the 20s or 30s probably. Okay, so back to the book. We're getting to the maybe the kintsugi part, the K-I-N-T-S-U-G-I, where in kintsugi the idea, I think, is like ceramics. So you have a teacup or something, and it breaks, and they repair it, and they put gold leaf or gold dust or something into the repair. So I have something similar. You'll see in a moment. Actually, we're almost at the end of this half of the video. It'll be time for the next half in a minute. But I think I start applying the material here. Yeah, see, I'm using the ruler. I'm using the angled edge to smooth out that tape. Make sure it adheres well to the inside of the dust cover. All right, almost. Yay, now I turn it around. Okay, so now the sticky side of the book repair tape is facing out. I could just cover it and it would just stick to the book cover plastic, but I'm not going to do that yet. I'm going to do something else first. It involves a paintbrush and a little screw cap jar of colorful metallic material. I'm putting down a paper towel first to try to catch it because this stuff is very, very light. Even if it's in flake shape, it's extremely thin, extremely light. It gets wafted around. Yeah, where is it? Is it coming? Yeah, so you see the cover. The complete short stories of Nathaniel Hawthorne, containing 72 tales by one of America's greatest writers. It doesn't have everything he wrote short form, but it has almost everything. If you dig, you find out there's some things that have been left out, like children's, like child's tales, like fables, a couple, and maybe like they call it sketches that are so short they're not even a short story. Do I see movement of shadow? Somewhere here. Come on, come on. The glare off the cover. Ugh. See also, you notice the dust jacket. The blue hues haven't faded, but the red has. So that's one thing. I remember there was someone did a blog post about colored pencils and how they fared under UV light, and even they found that the red pigments, the pinks and the reds, were the most prone to fading. Okay, here's the metallic stuff. I don't know. I think it's meant for ladies' gel fingernails. I didn't get it for that. Originally I dug it out for epoxy. So you want to make epoxy something, and then you want to decorate it with that, it'll get stuck in. Okay, see? So dip the brush in, get a little bit, and then apply. It clings to the bristles on the brush enough so you can just kind of paint it on. But of course, you can see it's falling over the paper towel, it's spreading everywhere.